Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. Long time no see. A special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery. A reminder that this is a make-believe monastery. In case I'm acting weird. What's that thing? I apologize for acting weird. I am weird. It will happen again. But in case you're wondering why we're doing rituals, it's because we're playing monastery. I hope you had a good day. It is Wednesday where you are, or maybe Thursday morning. Let me see how well I can see into the future. Let the day just roll off your shoulders. Embrace what was, what didn't come to pass, realized hopes, smashed dreams. Acknowledge all of those. Acknowledge the joy and the pain they caused. And then let them go. Tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow we fight again. In honor of Dionysius, one last time, since tomorrow night will be May Eve, let us listen to Plato. Stranger, it is also the last day of the statesman, the Eleatic stranger, to be exact. Must we not admit then that where these two classes exist, that is the two classes, the one being lovers of war and the other being lovers of peace, the temperate and the courageous, but then the other way around, supposedly. They always feel the greatest antagonism towards one another. Young Socrates. We cannot deny it. Stranger. And returning to the inquiry with which we began, have we not found that considerable portions of virtue are at variance with one another, and give rise to a similar opposition in the characters who are endowed with them? True. Let us consider a further point. What is it? I want to know whether any constructive art will make any, even the most trivial thing, out of bad and good materials indifferently. If this can be helped, does not all art rather reject the bad as far as possible and accept the good and fit materials, and from these elements, whether like or unlike, gathering them all into one, work out some nature or idea? To be sure. Then the true and natural art of statesmanship will never allow any state to be formed by a combination of good and bad men, if this can be avoided. but will begin by testing human natures in play. And after testing them, will entrust them to proper teachers who are the ministers of their purposes, her purposes, the state. She will herself give orders and maintain authority, just as the art of weaving continually gives orders and maintains authority over the carders and all the other who prepare the materials for work, commanding the subsidiary arts to execute the works which she deems necessary for making the web. Quite true. In like manner, the royal science appears to me to be the mistress of all lawful educators and instructors, and having this queenly power will not permit them to train men in what will produce characters unsuited to the political constitution which she desires to create, but only in what will produce such as are suitable. Those which have no share of manliness and temperance, or any other virtuous inclination, and from the necessity of an evil nature are violently carried away to godlessness and insolence and injustice, she gets rid of by death and exile, and punishes them with the greatest of disgraces. That is commonly said. But those who are wallowing in ignorance and baseness, she bows under the yoke of slavery. Quite right. Let no man enter here who does not know mathematics, right? Stranger, the rest of the citizens, out of whom if they have education, something noble may be made, and who are capable of being united by the statesman, the kingly arts blend and weaves together, taking on the one hand those whose natures tend rather to courage, which is the stronger element and may be regarded as the warp, and on the other hand those which incline to order and gentleness, and which are represented in the figure as spun thick and soft, after the manner of the woof. These which are naturally opposed, she seeks to bind and weave together in the following manner. In what manner? First of all, she takes the eternal element of the soul and binds it with a divine cord to which it is akin, and then the animal nature and binds that with human cords. I do not understand what you mean. Oh, I'm so glad someone asked. Stranger. The meaning is that the opinion about the honorable and the just and good and their opposites, which is true and confirmed by reason, is a divine principle, and when implanted in the soul is implanted, as I maintain, in the nature of a heavenly birth. Yes, what else should it be? Young Socrates, stranger. Only the statesman and the good legislator, having the inspiration of the royal muse, can implant this opinion, and he only in the rightly educated, whom we were just now describing. Likely enough. But him who cannot we will not designate by any of the names which are the subject of the present inquiry. Very right. The courageous soul, when attaining this truth, becomes civilized and rendered more capable of partaking of justice. But when not partaking, is inclined to brutality. Is not that true? Certainly. And again, the peaceful and orderly nature, if sharing in these opinions, becomes temperate and wise, as far as this may be in a state, but if not, deservedly obtains the ignominious name of silliness. Quite true. Can we say that such a connection as this will lastingly unite the evil with one another, or with the good, or that any science would seriously think of using a bond of this kind to join such materials? Impossible. But in those who were originally of a noble nature, and who have been nurtured in noble ways, and in those only may we not say that union is implanted by law, and that this is the medicine which art prescribes for them, and of all the bonds which unite the dissimilar and contrary parts of virtue, is not this, as I was saying, the divinest? Very true. Where this divine bonds exist, there is no difficulty in imagining, or when you have imagined, in creating the other bonds, which are human only. How is that, and what bonds do you mean? Rights by intermarriage, and ties which are formed between states by giving and taking children in marriage, or between individuals by private betrothals and espousals. For most persons form marriage connections without due regard to what is best for the procreation of children. In what way? They seek after wealth and power, which in matrimony are objects not worthy even of the serious censor. There is no need to consider them at all. More reason is there to consider the practice of those who make family their chief aim, and to indicate their error. Quite true. They act on no true principle at all. They seek their ease and receive with open arms those who are like themselves, and hate those who are unlike them, being too much influenced by feelings of dislike. How so? The quiet, disorderly class seeks for natures like their own, and as far as they can, they marry and give in marriage exclusively in this class. And the courageous do the same, they seek natures like their own, whereas they should both do precisely the opposite. How and why is that? Because courage, when untempered by the gentler nature during many generations, may at first bloom and strengthen, but at last burst forth into downright madness. Like enough. And then again, the soul which is overfull of modesty and has no element of courage in any successive generations, is apt to grow too indolent and at last to become utterly paralyzed and useless. That again is quite true, likely. Stranger, it was of these bonds I said that there would be no difficulty in creating them, if only both classes originally held the same opinion about the honorable and good. Indeed, in this single work, the whole process of royal weaving is comprised. never to allow temperate natures to be separated from the brave, but to weave them together like the warp and the woof, by common sentiments and honors and reputation, and by giving of pledges to one another, and out of them forming one smooth and even web, to entrust to them the offices of state. How do you mean? Where one officer only is needed, you must choose a ruler who has both these qualities. When many, you must mingle some of each. For the temperate ruler is very careful and just and safe, but is wanting in thoroughness and go. Certainly that is very true. The character of the courageous, on the other hand, falls short of the former in justice and caution, but has the power of action in a remarkable degree. And where either of these two qualities is wanting, their cities cannot altogether prosper either in their public or private life. Certainly they cannot. This then we declare to be the completion of the web of political action, which is created by a direct intertexture of the brave and temperate natures. Whether the royal science has drawn the two minds into communion with one another by anonymity and friendship, and having perfected the noblest and best of all the webs which political life admits, and enfolding therein all other inhabitants of cities, whether slaves or freemen, bind them in one fabric, and governs and presides over them, and in so far as to be happy is vouchsafed to the city in no particular, fails to secure their happiness. I think I missed a word or two there. Young Socrates, your picture, stranger, of the king and statesman, no less than of the sophist, is quite perfect. Thus far our scripture of the evening, and thus far the statesman. So I'm going to start at the end again. Friendship, the weaving together of different personalities. But do note, and I wonder if you remember way back when I had my weaving with me, I actually refer to the strings that, well, as you weave, you have them go down. The warp, I imagine, in English, needs to be strong. You pull the string, and it has to not have too much elasticity. It doesn't have to, shouldn't give way too much, and it shouldn't break. You should put some pressure on it so that it doesn't break. So that needs to be strong, the courageous part of the statesman or statesmen. And then the wolf, I imagine, in English, the one that you go through the straight, can be soft, it can be elastic. It really doesn't matter. It just makes your weaving a bit different. You just have to adapt a little bit. And he picks that up here, which I thought was quite cool. How the different virtues, which seem to be in contradiction to each other, is woven together, quite literally. Which I thought was really beautiful. So friendship. I think this relates somewhat to Aristotle's view on friendship. Because do remember that the divine needs to be in place first before you do this human mixing. And the divine is those of equal nobility. Let's put it that way. Because Aristotle has different types of friendship, but the real friendship, the friendship of virtue, can only be amongst equals. And that does make a lot of sense. But they're not equals in the particulars of what virtues you have and what I have, but in the state of nobility, your I don't know how to say that differently. I did have to think, actually, one of the, either a visitor or a member of the monastery asked about how this relates, if it doesn't feel completely opposite from the Republic. And in fact, this passage in particular reminded me extremely of the Republic. I am a bit confused now, like, oh, maybe I'm imagining things, but I think basically exactly the same is said in the Republic, because they kind of have arranged marriages, not kind of, marriages in the Republic, and this like, yeah, you should marry opposites, and then exactly the same type of two virtues are mentioned: the courageous and the temperate should be combined. So that I thought that was worth mentioning. The war of the virtues, before we had this beautiful weaving, I thought there was still a war of the virtues going on. And then I wrote, yeah, that is why phronesis indeed is necessary. And then the heavenly birth he talks about when he speaks about these noble natures. I started, as I finished Nietzsche, I started the introduction to this book. And who wrote the introduction? The person who wrote the introduction mentioned that I think my positive view of the sophists I got from reading this book a couple of years ago. I do not see the name of the person who wrote the introduction. I don't know if it's the same person. Probably Robin Waterfield. Usually, if it's someone else, their name appears underneath the introduction, and there's no name. He mentions he's very positive about the sophist or she, and they mention that the sophists were kind of needed, as the quality of education in Greece at that time wasn't that great. So for education, which is also a really important thing for Plato, and I think rightly so, was also very much emphasized by the sophist, if not the natural philosophers. Maybe the natural philosophers, if I think of their anecdotes, was more concerned simply with wandering at the world and finding answers. But the sophists were all about education. And that is why I've always been quite positive about the sophists. And as I've said in the past, people deserve to be paid for educating. So the plan is, tomorrow we are starting with Parmenides. And there is a whole chapter on Parmenides. Like I said, be careful what you asked for. I said, I want to know more about Parmenides, and then bam, there you go. Thank you very much. So what I will do from now on, I will, because there's like a chapter on Gorgias and a lot of the sophists whose names are given to the dialogues. I will read that as well as we go along. At varsity, I love learning, but I am horrible at actually studying. But I was lucky in that I had a 3-person, who then became 2-person group, who always studied together. And I would usually be already going to bed or just watching TV, and then one of them would show up at my place and like, hey, we have a test tomorrow, we need to study. Or what we would do, because most of our exams were oral exams, we would share like the reading load, and then we would teach each other. And that is actually the best way to learn. If you want to learn anything, teach it. So what I will do is I will just hold the book in my hand and share it with you. That is the plan going forward. So there will be now more of a teaching element, or what do you call it? I thought I escaped the tyranny of the propositions, since I couldn't even remember the name proposition. There would be more of a propositional element towards this. Maybe just one night throughout the whole, maybe more, because it's more reading, and then I don't have to, like, for instance, the 30th, which tomorrow, when we're going to start Parmenides, I'm not going to have time to read. It's month end. So I won't do everything in one day. But that is the plan. And I hope you're as excited about that as I am. I do want to end with a quote, which relates to what we read yesterday. A task has to be accomplished which, although difficult, seems to be necessary. And maybe it's just jumping out of me because I just finished Nietzsche. But there's like, I encircled this. There was a need for a new morality in the time of the sophists. Because people have already been losing their connection with the gods of Homer, say, for instance. And then they refer to a story of I'm going to read the story. It's from this book. I hope this is not considered plagiat. The story goes that a ship under an Egyptian helmsman was becalmed off the island of Paxoi, which lies off the western coast of Greece, just south of Corfu. As they were drifting there, a supernatural voice was suddenly heard from the island, calling the name of the helmsman. Thamos, Thamos. The helmsman did not reply at first, but the third time the voice called his name, he said, "Here I am. What do you want?" The voice replied, "When you reach the Sea of Palodes, a place on Paxoi, presumably, you are to call out, 'Great Pan, the god, is dead.'" The boat drifted on until they reached Palodes. Thamos did as he had been instructed. But before he had even making the announcement, "The great Pan god is dead," A loud cry of lamentation and bewilderment broke out from all around them, as if many voices were all crying out at once. The gods, it seems, have gone. It seems to be the story of humanity. The gods die, and then we have to give birth to them again. And what did we read tonight? That it's really important choosing the materials for giving birth to something new. And definitely when it comes to something as great as the gods. Whatever that might mean. The gods are dead. Long live the gods. And may the spirit of Sophia be with you.